Today's guest is one of the world's most influential voices on leadership, culture, and the future of work. He's a former Microsoft partner, a LinkedIn top voice, an advisor to global CEOs. His gift? Turning complex ideas into powerful stories that help us grow. Please welcome the incredible Abhijit Bhaduri.
We live in an or world. You are either this or that. You're either an HR person or you're a cartoonist. Why can't you be a HR person who's also a cartoonist, or a cartoonist who's a HR person, whichever way?
Last time we had this guest, we had an intriguing conversation. But where we ended was that these 6 skills that you need to build that 3.0, build that next version of yourself.
Likewise, and I think with the AI meltdown, which everyone is talking about now, this is just the perfect time to talk about what are those human skills which will survive and make your career AI-proof, so to say.
What does Career 3.0? Where did this idea, what does it really mean?
There are people who juggle 2 ecosystems, so that's Career 2.0. So Career 1.0 is one ecosystem, the sports example. If the sports person also, let's say, starts understanding the musical ecosystem, then you begin to slowly start finding similarities and differences. So that's your 2 ecosystems. And 3 is when you are juggling multiple. 3 is just a number, it could be more than that.
Before you dive into the full podcast, I just want you to know, I don't want you to share it with anyone, because not everyone's ready for this kind of wisdom, for this deep a conversation. If you think there's someone in your network who would enjoy this, then please do share it with them, else just keep it to yourself. And it breaks my heart to see that almost 78% of you are not subscribed to the channel. If you can click on that subscribe button, it'll mean the world. Last time we had this guest, we had an intriguing conversation, and I'll put the link top here somewhere left or right so that you can go back to that conversation. But where we ended was that these 6 skills that you need to build that 3.0, build that next version of yourself. And I'm going to quickly go through these 6 skills before I introduce Abhijit back to the conversation. The 6 skills were: learn what you've not been taught, then go and teach it without using the same words so that there's proof in learning, be a storyteller, focus on your personal brand, can you work through multiple ecosystems, and how do you spot the next S-curve or look at your skills like a VC? Abhijit, I'm looking forward to this conversation today and dissecting through all these 6 skills.
Well, so am I. I'm always excited to talk about Career 3.0.
Amazing. And you know, I think why this is like a very apt time. I was in a webinar yesterday and they were talking about AI and how AI has changed itself, not even the world, in the last 3 years since the inception of, in a way, like commercialized ChatGPT. And I feel like the space is going to only increase. And so for us to really focus on how we evolve ourselves, this is just the apt time to have this conversation.
Likewise, and I think with the AI meltdown, which everyone is talking about now, this is just the perfect time to talk about what are those human skills which will survive and make your career AI-proof, so to say. So
yeah, proof. I love that. I love that. And last time when you were here, Abhijit, we typically do the 8-year and the 8-year-old questions. We're not going to do those same today, but I'm just going to repeat what you said. You said that your 8-year-old, if that meets your current self, it'll say, learn languages, work on yourself. And you said, look at yourself from the eyes of the enemy, which I think is an intriguing concept. And then when we finished the episode, you said that the 8-year-old should have the curiosity of the 8-year-old, be comfortable with being forgotten, and be a novice in more areas than you're an expert on. Has anything shifted from August to now? We're filming this in November.
no, I think it's just that, my 8-year self is so far behind and my 80-year-old self is so far ahead that I'd like to live in the present moment. Since you asked, those were the first 3 things that came to my mind. But yeah, I mean, I think I'd still endorse all 3, ideas for each.
Love it. Love it. So let's get into first understanding, Abhijit, what does Career 3.0, where did this idea, what does it really mean? Because before I dissect into those 6 skills, I just want to understand at a high level, what does Career 3.0 look like?
Most of us actually spend our career within an ecosystem. So, for example, somebody who's a sports person, you play rugby, you are actually looking at that ecosystem. So, you know everything about rugby, you know the rugby players, you know how it works and all of that. But you don't know very much about another ecosystem, let's say medicine, you don't know that. Or you don't know anything about accounting. But actually, when you think about people who are very successful, they combine multiple ecosystems And that's really, I kind of graded it as there are people who juggle two ecosystems. So that's career 2.0. So career 1.0 is one ecosystem, the sports example. If the sports person also, let's say, starts understanding the musical ecosystem, then you begin to slowly start finding similarities and differences. So that's your two ecosystems. And three is when you are juggling multiple. Three is just a number, it could be more than that. But really, what you are doing is you are juggling three different, completely different ecosystems. And then the advantage is that you are able to now combine different skills, different combinations, and create opportunities for yourself, which, being one ecosystem oriented makes you a specialist, but doesn't give you too much flexibility when the world around you changes. So think about it like if you are a swimmer and the swimming pool becomes empty, could you become a 100-meter sprint person? That's the skill that I'm talking about.
And as I'm reflecting on that, there are, I think, numerous examples in the world right now. Like you look at a David Beckham, from sports to then business to then how he's a celebrity. And I'm also putting him on all these 6 skills. I was just reading, like he built a brand of minerals where he used to take like 18 to 20 pills every day to stay the amazing fit person he is. And he worked with someone to build a brand around that, which is worth $1 billion plus. You look at a Virat Kohli, you look at Anushka, anyone, right? And what examples come to your mind that when you think of these career 3.0 and maybe you've studied them or dissected them?
From most of the people that you and I land up admiring, we are admiring them because they've done something exceptional. I mean, so even, somebody who evidently seems to be from one ecosystem. For example, I was, chatting with Kaushiki Chakrabarti, who's the amazing Indian classical singer. When I look at her, I always, when I started writing the book Career 3.0, I actually had someone like her as the model of Career 1.0. One ecosystem, you are a classical musician, that's it. And then you are just going whole hog and you are taking it to perfection. Now, while she remains an amazing performer in that field, she's also experimented in, creating a web series. She's, singing different kinds of genres of music. I just recently heard her singing a Carnatic rag, and with the kind of clarity and perfection that if I did not know, I mean, somebody just sent me the audio recording and said, just guess the singer. And I, for the life of me, couldn't figure out who it could be. I said, look, I'm not that familiar. He says, no, it's somebody you are very familiar with. Then I was thinking of my friends. And then, of course, it was, she experimenting in a completely different genre. So that's an example of somebody who is, we all play multiple roles in our lives. So it is not that unusual. You are a parent, you are also a friend, you're a husband, you're a radio jockey, whatever, all the things that you do. So it's really the most natural way in which we complete, ourselves by trying out many different things that our potential allows us to do.
So what about those who are unable to play in these different domains? What's missing for them?
No, it's, you could be a specialist. I mean, I guess if you define your field in a very broad sense, you could be a specialist in a very broad field. And that also sort of in some sense creates opportunities for you, So good example, I just said, here is a singer who's changing genres. So therefore you're opening up to a different audience altogether. She's creating Instagram reels. Now, as like an influencer, if you see her Instagram following, it's amazing to see somebody who's popularizing classical music in a completely different language altogether. So she doesn't do, 2-hour performances. She's doing like a 1-minute piece and saying, here is how you could learn it. If you are learning a song, here is what you should do. So that's just, the way Career 3.0 actually operates.
Very interesting. So a core skill that you layer it plus add a little bit more dynamics to it, and that also becomes Career 3.0 in beautiful ways.
Yeah. You can change the ecosystem, you can change the audience, you can change the price point, you can change, something which is a complement to whatever you're selling. So it's all of that.
That just opens up infinite possibilities.
That's true. That's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, that's super cool. So let's dive into the skills. The first one, what I have on my notes is learn what you've not been taught. Help us understand it more broadly. Like, what does this mean, and how do we get there?
The way that we very often we build a career is through really getting to know one element. We specialize in something: a marketing person, a HR person, a sports person, a singer. These various things are just one dimension. But how do you start learning things to begin with in the adjacencies and then progressively broaden that spectrum, a whole lot? So one of the ways to do it is, for example, a lot of my skills you will see involve reading and writing, because that's one of the ways you are almost creating your own curriculum. So, for example, if you just simply, every time somebody says, "Oh, I read this amazing book and it changed my life." Today I was recording a conversation with Rajiv Ahuja. He's one of the executive directors of RBL Bank, and he talked about how he's so fascinated by history, and he talked about William Dalrymple's books, and then he talked about how he's really fascinated by biographies, and he gave me two recommendations, and I've jotted that down. Neither of the books have I read, but it's amazing that how much you can build if you start really following the reading list that all your heroes keep recommending. Or also, for example, if you see the creations of somebody over time, and you really study it and analyze and say, what did the person start doing? What is different? How did the art evolve? Or whatever you're trying to study. What did they start doing? What did they stop doing? You create different ways in which you can learn. Or, very often when they make explainer videos, how have they become better at doing that? What are they stopping? What are they starting? That's another stop and start is another very powerful way to sort of build that. So in summary, what you're really doing is saying, instead of creating a library, what about creating a maker studio, where you are trying out something. So that's one of the ways. And just to, hang around with people who are slightly one notch better than you, one notch better. That really can pull up your own game, So like in school, in our school, the football team used to be fairly good, and the boxers in our school were also really very accomplished. The way I realized they were trained is every kid used to box with somebody who was one notch higher, So somebody in 7th grade would box with somebody in the 8th grade, who's bulkier, bigger, and sort of really ups that game. And then you learn from different kinds of punches, of course, quite literally.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways in which you can do it.
Yeah. I'll pick on this one first. You're very subtly saying one notch a few times. Why just one notch? Why not a couple of or multiple levels up?
See, if you take somebody like, for example, if I were to say that, okay, I want to become a runner, I want to be like Usain Bolt, and let me benchmark Usain Bolt. It's an impossible goal. I'll never reach it. But if I say that, the whole notion that I can become slightly better, as they say, if I become like just 1% better every day, it's amazing, what that does to you. So over time, a lot of us, when we do these massive goals on New Year's, instead of that, just every day, just do just one bit more than what you did yesterday. That's good enough. It always works.
And it feels that it's small, but small compounding over time. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. It works, and we often, like when we work with the team and how do we improve the podcast, and we have these conversations. We want to look at Stephen Bartlett, we want to look at Joe Rogan, but we cannot leap there in like day one, right? So what I've told the team is, let's keep getting 1% better in how we approach each episode, each conversation, each guest, and see where we land. And it just relieves the pressure.
Absolutely. That's just the perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
So the next time when you're having those conversations, maybe I should join you, and then I can also learn from you.
and we can get some guidance from you. Absolutely.
No, I'm no benchmark. I am there to learn. I'm the boxer in the 7th grade trying to learn from the 9th grade boxers.
God, love the idea. And this idea, maker studio, what does that look like? Like if someone's right now working a beautiful job that they're doing, getting everything done, and they want to build like a maker studio for something that they're passionate about, what would you recommend to them? What does a maker studio look like?
I'll give you my example. I have always been interested in writing. So, somewhere in whatever, in 2005, I just thought that I'm going to, actually earlier than that, 2005 is when I got published, but maybe 7, 8 years before that, I decided I'm going to write something every single day. That time there were no blogs or anything of that sort. But doing that, I used to write, but I used to write sporadically. Someday I'll sit down and write a lot, and then for like 4 months, nothing. And then I'll write for 2 consecutive days, get inspired, then nothing happens for the next year. So I was one of those people. Then I decided that I'm going to make it a habit to just write every single day. So just the act of writing, and then it's funny because then the story unfolds, and actually what happens is you start to improve the story, you start to do different things, so that's how. And then when blogging became a thing, I was one of the early adopters. I started blogging. I created my own blogspot.com, abhijitbhaduri.blogspot.com. And, I did that. And then, of course, I created my own website and started to compile all my articles. I started to look at that as not necessarily as a place where I show off, but a place where I practice. So I visualize my own website as a practice arena, so I write about things because it helps me, become clearer. If I'm working on a workshop, I'll try and think through those things, do my sketches and put some of that online, so it just makes it easier for you to start thinking about.
Love it. Love it. I think I've read about Seth Godin also doing such a practice where he would write a blog every single day, whether short, long, and consistently done that for years.
Yeah, he's the gold standard in that. He writes, even if it's one line, but he'll publish it every day. More often than not, what happens is you kind of write that one line and you say, gosh, I mean, that sounds truly pretentious that I publish one line so no, let me think of something better. And that's a terrible thing to happen because, perfection becomes the enemy of your own progress. So you just have to just think of it as a practice studio, not as a performance studio. It's not a stage.
Yeah, love it. And I think another way that I've experienced learning new skills, which I've been blessed to be able to do that, is just experimenting and doing some small experiment, which can hopefully lead to something. And I remember, Abhijit, where we met like earlier, when I started filming, no one said, Utkarsh, you're okay, go ahead and film something for us. But I kept a camera in my drawer for that moment to appear where I would be ready to make that happen. So I think those small experiments, trying to put yourself out of that comfort zone, I think that is a trick that absolutely works any day.
Yeah, it does. And I absolutely love that idea.
Yeah, love it. Let's move to the next one. Teaching. Why is teaching an important skill to hone?
When you are teaching somebody, sort of clarifies your own thinking if you decide not to simply repeat the way you've been taught that particular thing. So reframe it, think of new examples, think of places where it doesn't work, think of places where it works, think of many different examples. So, I just wrote a blog post about, how do you think like a filmmaker? So you don't sort of really start, when you're writing something, don't just start by doing a long build up and saying, this is going to be an amazing story, I'm going to tell you about this. And if you see that Indiana Jones video, which I put on my website, abhijitbhaduri.com, you'll see that it just begins with that boulder, going there and you're saying, oh my God, I mean, this guy's going to die, this guy's going to die. So it's really that. Can you create learning content to be like that, where somebody's at the edge of their seat and leaning forward to know, oh my God, what's next? That to me is the next evolution of what content needs to be. So doing that, or just running really like a stupid question office hours. Ask me anything. So no matter how fundamental, and when people ask you that question, so I have a community called Talented, which is, talent and education combined, Talented, which is where we sort of have a group of, enthusiasts who are interested in multidisciplinary thinking. We meet once a month and we discuss, we invite somebody to come and talk about something, challenge their ideas, get challenged ourselves, discuss ideas amongst ourselves, share stuff. So it's really all of that that keeps it going. So really teaching others is a very powerful way to build it.
Yeah. And you'll be able to simplify and only when you really understand the idea, understand the concept. So I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, to clarify your own thinking, to be able to paraphrase, add your own layers and experiences to it, because then that makes the concept very unique to who you are, right?
Yeah, and also if you, in some ways, take on different personas and say, if I was doing this particular piece like a stand-up comedian, how would I explain this? If I was doing this like a historian, how would I explain this? If I was doing this like somebody who is teaching kids, how would I explain this? If I was doing adult education, how would I explain this? Every time you change the thing, it becomes different. Suppose I was talking to people with disability who cannot, visualize something, who can't see something, then how would I do it through sound? So you can just go on and on. There are 100 ways in which you can recreate something.
That's so cool. To add this layer of that you're explaining to the kids, you're a stand-up comedian. Like I'm just imagining teaching someone how to have feedback conversations, or how to have how to understand emotional intelligence in a way of a comedian. That'll be pretty fascinating for the learning and
Yeah,
development fraternity.
it is. It is. And if you try doing it, sometimes it fails. But more often than not, we humor is something that makes the other person actually empathize with you and really start, because can never laugh until you really stepped into my shoes. If I explain a joke and I tell you something which is hysterically funny for me, until you are able to see it from my own eyes, you will not laugh. So, improv is a great way of building that capability of teaching. So,
Wow, that's such a. I'm going to experiment with that. I'm going to make this shout out right here, because personal growth is something that like I feel if you're not growing, like what are you doing in life? But I've felt that there's a lot of resistance also, right? Because it's not catchy content. It's not content that gets spread and becomes viral as something else. And so, how do you combine personal growth and humor? That'll be pretty cool to do. Beautiful. Let's move to the next one. Because teaching is super clear. You need to understand the concepts yourself to be able to share with others. I love the idea of the personas. Being a storyteller, where does that come in from?
it's if you see, these skills are all linked. I mean, in order to be a better teacher, you need to be a better storyteller. So a very simple thing could be that you take an everyday event that you're going to drop your kids to school. Describe this like a thriller. What happens. So every morning I would sort of decide whether this kid will wake up in time. Will he be able to finish breakfast? I think he'll just about make it. And then will he be able to, catch the school bus? If you were to do this, imagine narrating it like a thriller, narrating in a funny way, narrating it like a mystery. Everyday events, and just sort of probably taking some of the most common mundane examples. But if you really start thinking about what makes it funny, it forces you to start observing minor details. For example, you will see the way the kid eats differently when they are in a hurry versus when they are not in a hurry, when they really want to delay going to school and when they are eager to go to school. How does that change? If you start observing minor details, would they have their favorite breakfast on the day when they are in a hurry or when they are relaxed? So you start to observe more. Good storytelling is really all about observations, about the most mundane things. And when we laugh, we are laughing not necessarily because we are seeing that person's story, but because we can say, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I did." That's really great storytelling when the other person steps into your shoes and watches it with you.
That's so interesting. I'm just imagining, and I get to drop my son to school every morning. So just this idea of making sure if I'm observing these small details when I'm thinking of myself as a storyteller and enacting it as a thriller or sharing it, it just shifts how I'm looking at this thing and connects to something that someone said to me, Abhijit, yesterday. So I was proofreading a document and I missed a couple of very easy things, and like 2 out of maybe 20. And they were in advertising, and they said, Utkarsh, one of the best things that was told to me was that start to read the document backwards, and you will pay extra attention because your brain is programmed. And I'm thinking that if you start to tell stories in these different ways, making a thriller, you're so much aware for in life as well.
Yeah, and just tell yourself that I'm going to have to record a 60-second script based on what I just observed today, and it better be interesting. So record it for yourself. Force yourself to do it in exactly 60 seconds with a timer, and you know, see what that does. That whole tension, and just do it one time and say, okay, I couldn't make it today. Tomorrow I'm going to do it differently, and I'm going to do it. So you would become really good as a storyteller over time, because you learn, as you know, as one of those great masters who had said that when he was asked, how do you make that masterpiece, David, and Michelangelo is supposed to have said that, that's pretty easy. Just remove everything from that marble which is not David. So it's really, how do you do that?
Yeah, chip away on the excess, chip away that extra stone, and that'll happen by this daily practice that we are speaking about, by learning that skill and stepping out of that comfort zone, going back and teaching, storytelling. I love these ideas. And to the listeners, there might be a lot to this. Might feel like drinking from a fire hose, but I think just slow it down for yourself and just pick up maybe one or two things that you can just start with deliberately. I think the key lies, Abhijit, is to be intentional and making sure that you invest yourself in these things, because otherwise another year will pass and we'll say, oh, 2025 went by too quickly, 2026 came and went by too quickly. But the change will happen only when you're intentional about making that change happen.
Yeah, just the act of taking one mundane thing, and for variation, next day talk about your own breakfast as today's funny story.
Yeah.
So it could be just that, and what happens when you go shopping, what happens when you go driving. Think of that as a mystery, think of that as a funny story. And, it's all of that. And my favorite genre, of course, is humor, because it's one of the best ways in which you can reframe something, something which is absolutely banal, everything's boring, and then you reframe it and you kind of say that, imagine how do you build excitement into this entire story. So
Yeah. You grow so much through that experience, and so now I'm understanding how applying all of these would help someone build that careers 3.0 that we started the conversation with.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. And in this day and age where content seems to be leading the way, everyone's talking a lot about personal brand, which is number 4 here. What's been your experience, and how do we unfold this for the listener? What does a personal brand look like, and why is it important?
If in any field there are millions of people like you, so the concept of any competition and to be standing out from the crowd is to actually sort of talk about what's different about you. One of the easiest ways in which you can be somebody different is to think of yourself as an and person. So I did a TED talk on the power of the and, that, we very often say we live in an or world. You are either this or that. You're either an HR person or you're a cartoonist. Why can't you be a HR person who's also a cartoonist, or a cartoonist who's a HR person, whichever way. And then you add other things, that I'm a content creator who's a cartoonist and a HR person. That suddenly makes you, suddenly the universe shrinks, and you'll think of barely, in this whole group of 8 billion people, there'll be very few people who will be exactly like that. And that too, they will not be doing it exactly the way you do. So that's really where you build your uniqueness. So brand is about discovering your uniqueness through the and process. The other is, I would say that when if you give away something for free. So for example, on LinkedIn, all those sketches that I put, all this stuff, I always tell people that, you're a subscriber, you are reading the newsletter, use the sketch notes whichever way you want. Go ahead and use it. So a lot of people say, hey, that's my content, don't use it without my permission. My point is, I give it away for free because, it does one of the two things. If it's a good idea, they like it, they should be able to benefit from it because they've invested time to read it. So that's the simple act of gratitude. But more importantly, in a very selfish way, it forces me, if I give away something, I can't do the same thing again, right? I'll have to do something different because it forces me to continuously think of something different every time. So it's one of the best ways in which you can challenge yourself.
Yeah.
So you build a personal brand through giving away something for free.
Giving value for free and doing it again, back to that consistently over time. And I loved what you said. So you said something like, be the and person and the universe shrinks. And I think this and mindset is super powerful because as you're saying, people live with that that I can be or, either this or that. And that kind of limits our growth.
And, the and can be very liberating because, you kind of don't have to think that I'm now 25, so it's too late to learn what I missed in the 8th grade. No, I mean, I'm an and person. I'm a 25-year-old who's a chartered accountant and is trying to learn the 3 laws of physics. So, just reframe it in whichever way you want to, and that just creates possibilities for yourself.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I would love your views on this. I think it's the education system, especially I grew up in India where the education system was very like, you can be good at maths or you can do arts, you can do science or you can do this. And they always ask you to like choose and pick one because you can be an expert only in one. How do you think, that education influenced the current generation, and then what's changing?
I mean, I'd like to think that education system historically, when you look at that, was designed for a career 1.0 world, so it was really like that. Having said that, I don't think anybody prevents you from having 15 hobbies, so I've always dabbled in many different things, not that I became good at all of them or none of them, but the fact that, if you stop thinking about anything that you are learning as a practice arena, rather than a performance arena, it just changes how you view things, and it just gets you so much of freedom because then you can try many different things, and that experimentation in fact gives you the confidence. Hey, if somebody wants me to do a demo, I'm happy to do it because then you are not conscious, so you can of course do that.
Yeah, so shift your perspective from looking at it as a performance arena to a practice arena.
Yeah.
Love that. I think it'll just shift the energy that you can go in with. And one thing that I often share, Abhijit, is that like I reach out to you, right, for the podcast, and you always are so kind that you say yes, but there are 50 and maybe hundreds of others who are not immediately saying yes to a podcast conversation. And I have that very almost like loving energy, but the energy is that the podcast is going to succeed with or without you. If you're here, I'll have the most amazing conversation and I want you to be here. But if you're not, that's okay too, because there's maybe some other podcast that you would share your story better on. And so I think that's also really important.
Yeah, that's always the case, that if nothing in the world waits for one human being to do, and then, we don't. So.
Yeah. I'm going to love this idea, the performance versus the practice arena. I think this is super helpful. Now we move to the multiple ecosystems, which is where we are now talking about like how does one really grapple through these multiple states, right? So what does this mean? What does this skill, the fifth one, mean?
You were talking about the example of David Beckham, that he's a football player, and as part of being a football player, he would have had to, stay fit. And now he's teaching people how to stay fit. And he's also talking about another element. Somebody else used to actually give him these minerals, and he's created a sort of a massive brand about the minerals. He's brought in his celebrity status to endorse what he's doing and talk about his fitness. He's lived that. He's sharing that. So if you see, it's all the skills that we talked about, that learn what you don't know. So he didn't know about minerals. But that. Now he's teaching others how to become really so good. he's the personal brand that he's created as being this person who's an achiever who's also now trying to do something different. And in that process, he's reinvented himself. So if you see all the people who've had multiple careers, second career, third career, fourth career, they're all and people. They've not been limited by their success in something.
Yeah. And these ideas are so simple, yet I think, Abhijit, like on the ground, sometimes they become really hard for people to practice. Do you agree to that statement?
It's if you think of anything as a practice arena, your home is your practice arena, your website is your practice arena. My LinkedIn post is my practice arena. Everything that I do doesn't always necessarily resonate deeply. There's something that I may have worked very hard to bring across, and nobody reads it, and I feel disappointed. Then I say, okay, I'm disappointed because it was a performance mindset that I performed and you didn't appreciate. I just need to just move on and do the next thing. So don't get excited about a great piece, or get disappointed about something which is not working. So that's how it's not that I'm, just because I'm stating it so eloquently doesn't necessarily mean that I can practice it myself, but I try to move in that direction. If I'm feeling disappointed, inevitably it's because it's come from a performance mindset. And in anything, I mean, in the podcast, you could have a performance mindset that you are really trying to show people how amazingly thought-provoking you are. But if you give up that mindset and just really start to do it like a practice mindset, you say, okay, this is what I believe and here is how I want to do it. It just changes the entire thing.
Yeah. And you enjoy the conversation more. You're
Sure.
less attached to the outcome and all of that. It's just liberating as you're saying it.
It is.
Yeah. It reminds me of that Steve Jobs quote, right? That you can connect the dots backwards. And so if every podcast episode, or if every LinkedIn post, or if every project that one's leading, if they become just part of your practice arena and you keep trying to get better at it, and at the end of the day, whatever that definition of success looks like for you, I think we all will get there if we keep doing it consistently and with that 1% improvement mindset.
Yes, completely. And and that opportunity is available to everyone, right? You can, anyone can really start to do that.
Yeah.
So,
and more and more with the technology, with the use of AI, with the internet, so, like it's just unbelievable. The opportunities that the current world gives us is just infinite possibilities.
totally. We are in the world of abundance. So any music that you want to hear, I mean, is like available to you, and most of it is free. Most of it.
Correct.
So if you think about it, I mean, what an amazing opportunity we've got in our lifetime to do this.
Yeah.
So
I don't think my kids have ever seen a tape recorder and a cassette, and they would not understand how to put a pen and then you have to re-rotate it and then you flip this. And it was so limited, right? That if you like a song in an album, you'll have to buy the whole album to listen to that song again and again. Now they have
and
Spotify and
then
whatnot.
from that came the innovation that when you really want to impress somebody, you created a mixtape. So, that song from Eagles, one song from Elton John, all of that. Yeah, the Beatles was so innovation actually happens from constraints. Totally.
Correct. Been there, done that. Oh, it's nostalgia of those years. Amazing. The final one, before we get to that 3.0, and while we practice all of these, the sixth one, what does it mean to identify that S curve? What does it mean to think of yourself and your skills as a VC would?
At a very simple level, when you think about your skills, there are some skills which you are really very good at. You are an expert. Some skills you are above average, and some skills you are a novice, you are a beginner. So if you take that portfolio for just about all the skills that you have, there are some skills, as soon as you are past you are in that expert zone, it is actually time to replace it, because that skill then is now becoming, because you've been teaching it to others, hopefully that's how you become an expert. If you look at the previous 5 skills. in some sense, this is time for you to then start to become a novice yourself, so that you are at any given point of time, you are a novice in more areas than an expert in, because that means you're continuously juggling many different things. So that's really the opportunity that you can have. So and the way that I kind of think about this is, what is changing, if you sort of really look at that. And very often when people ask me to talk about some trends or something, the lens I use is what was once boring, which is now becoming exciting. So when you sort of look at that, most recently I did a post on this whole phenomenon of young people going in for fake marriages. And why is that happening? So they are taking all the boring parts of the marriage, and moving that out and keeping just the fun part of it. Now, and if you sort of really look at that, that's a very big trend. I was talking to somebody, one of my friends here in Seattle. I was telling them that this is one of the things that I observed in India when I was there last month. And he said, no, that's weird. I mean, why would somebody do that? And then the next day he sends me a little Facebook message which says, fake marriage, you've heard about it, now it's here in Seattle. And he said, you are so right, I am 24 hours ahead of the curve. So it's all of, so anything which is boring, like defense, is becoming so different now. It's changing. The government in many of the places is becoming so exciting. If you think of use cases, all the places where there are massive constraints, those are the places where you'll see trends. So that's how I kind of think about it. That's where the next big S curve will come from. So
Got it. And all these mindset and skills that we've spoken about, I think they help you identify that S curve. They help you be more intentional and aware of what's going to happen. But here's a challenge, and then we'll come and bring this conversation to a close. Imagine a 30-year-old or 32-year-old Abhijit who's in career 1.0, maybe exploring a little bit of 2.0, who sees others take these leaps, but he feels like, or she feels like, there are these constraints that have been put on me, which are my handcuffs, which can't allow me to do the experiments which others are doing, or am I too late, and all of that. Like, how does reading Careers 3.0 as the book help someone take this leap?
I think the way I look at it is, many years back when I was in college, I was attempting my very clumsy effort at playing football. And on the soccer field, I fell down and, I sort of fractured my wrist. And so my arm was in a sling plaster cast for like 8 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it was. I don't remember now. But it's funny that when that happened, I learned how to shave with my left hand. It's pretty amazing because when I started to do this, I thought I'm going to cut myself. But the first day was clumsy. Obviously, I took an enormously long time because I was cautious. And then very quickly, I learned how to get past that. So no matter what the constraint is, using that constraint, what can you do? How can you leverage that constraint to be, the instrument of creativity? So my plaster cast was the instrument that taught me how to sort of shave with my left hand, tie my shoelaces with the left hand. It was horrendously hard. And to do it with one hand, and then sort of, it was like really terrible. But I learned how to do it. Now again, I've forgotten it. Today, if I were to do it, I would have to learn it afresh. So you have to own it and continue nurturing it. So all skills, remain strangers at first until you have to be good friends with them, which means you spend time with them every day.
Love it. Love it. And everyone who's an expert begins as a beginner, because there's no other way. You cannot go and play
Everything in this world,
Wimbledon
we
on
are
day one.
strangers. Yeah. We are strangers to everything.
Absolutely. You cannot play the Wimbledon day one. You cannot play the ICC Men's World Cup day one. You have to start in the nets. You have to start with holding the bat. You have to start with holding the pen, or whatever that looks like for you. Love this conversation, Abhijit, and I'm pretty sure that listeners who are still with us would have gained so much from this experience. Any final advice before we drop the mic?
Why don't you give me your recommendations, ideas on each of these six? So, how do you learn something you've not been taught?
That's a great question. So learn something that you've not been taught. Experiment. I think that's the best way. First, just understand what is your why. Why do you want to learn that thing, and then go and experiment. And that's the best thing. When you go into teaching, I think what works for me is as you were saying, right? Okay, so when I started doing sessions and coaching, I used to feel like everyone should have a growth mindset. It's such a simple, stupid concept. Like, why do people live without a growth mindset? And then I started doing these sessions where I would go in and I would really see people who have not embraced it fully yet. So I think there was that judgment that I was walking in the room with that was really stopping me from growing. So the teaching then helped me open new frontiers for myself and understanding my audience really better. So that's absolutely helpful. Storytelling. I think stories resonate, right? I remember my kids when they were growing up. So my younger one used to feel really upset with the elder one saying something to him. And I used to give him like a Lincoln story. I used to give him like a Gandhi story. And those, he's grown up to 12 years, but he still remembers that story. So I think the story stays with you forever. And that allows you to then have the idea. So that's what, and I would recommend the action that I feel I would recommend is that people should have, like they should build like a repertoire of stories. They should like collect stories somewhere. Personal brand, can't speak enough. Go to my LinkedIn. I think just start posting. I see people really doubting that what I'm posting is even worth it or not. It's always worth it, and it's your voice, and it's worth expressing. So just go and do it. Multiple ecosystems. I think if you're going to force yourself to the first four, the multiple ecosystems are going to arise, and it'll become inevitable, Abhijit. And but yeah, get onto the ecosystem that gives you a lot of joy, and stay on it, and keep investing yourself, because there's anything good takes time to build. And so I think that's what my advice would be. And skills as a VC, I think this is a new one for me, so I need to think more before I share anything.
One of the ways that I kind of have been experimenting of late is try to find a subreddit where there is no subreddit. So that's very typically, or very few people, two or three people, they've just started talking about it. And that's just a very neat way to discover the next S curve, or the weak signals, unexplained trends. Why is somebody doing that? I mean, so if you ask yourself, why is somebody going through these fake weddings? That gives you a good idea of a trend potentially.
Yeah.
Fashion, of course, tells you so much. What are people doing differently? And most of the times, I mean, if you see, these examples are right around us. I mean, so if you see that, the people don't eat at the same time anymore in many families, because there's a distribution, and the other day I was hearing a podcast where Kishore Bayani was saying the kind of things that tell people that you are better off or rich now first show up in food. And he was saying the number of people who eat avocados or blueberries and things like that, is a sign of upward mobility. At the same time, I was listening to one of the Dalit scholars who said that when I heard my uncle has diabetes, I felt really proud. And so you kind of say, wow, why? He says, because it's a rich man's disease. So it comes from some leisure, not walking too much, eating all the stuff that otherwise was beyond reach. So, for everything, when you take something that makes you pause and stop, that is something which is always fascinating.
Love it. Love it. Always a joy to speak with you, Abhijit, and hopefully our listeners, you got something to pause and reflect and think about, and the podcast was interesting. If it was, and if you're still here 50 minutes into it, share it with someone who might enjoy this. And if you're on YouTube, put your name in the comments, put something in the comments so that we can see that you're here. Subscribe to the channel. And Abhijit, again, just a joy to have this conversation with you. This is you and me signing off.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.